Good morning from a chilly France. I've just been down to the boulangerie on my bike, and I'm keeping my cycling jacket on because I'm so cold. Sometimes when I go cycle out in the cold, and it wasn't a long run because I can't cycle very far. Takes a while to warm up again, so just being sensitive to that. I'm staying wrapped up. I was watching the UK news a moment ago. Good Morning Britain, and which can be quite controversial because of the presenters on there. And they were talking to one of the politicians in the US and asking him how he can possibly defend or continue to support Trump in his position, given particularly the recent press conference where he suggested that people could inject themselves with disinfectant. And quite remarkable how this guy could kind of justify it and sort of still be adamant that, I mean, and some of you may have this view, so you know, tell which position I'm coming from. But how can you believe that someone who's suggesting that you can nuke the eye of a hurricane, for example, in order to disperse it, or that you can inject disinfectant in order to wipe out the coronavirus, which of course it would, because it probably wipe out the person at the same time, and that stealth bombers, stealth fighters, you know, are amazing because the enemy can't see them. It's like you thought you could be like up by one and it was invisible. Things like that, which are funny and at another level quite terrifying, I think. And I was reminded of a quote that I referred to recently in a webinar, which is a quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I wrote it down just to get the words correct, who said that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. So I was just amused, thinking that from my perspective, therefore Trump supporters must have first-rate intelligence on that basis, but surely not. I suppose that I've got to find a way around that, and I think the way around that is that, because I don't believe that, the way around that is that they believe those comments, so they're not opposing ideas in their mind, they actually are both valid ideas. And so that leads me to the words that we use. And I've done a couple of online coaching sessions. I tend to do probably most of my coaching sessions, except the ones I'm doing on programs, online, you know, on Zoom or Skype these days. And their emphasis has been on language and the words that they use. And I'll probably do a second video about, or at least a second video on this tomorrow. And we have habits. One of the things that it's useful to explore I believe, in a coaching session or in life, are the habits that we have. So we have habits with our behavior, habits with, you know, things that we, so for example, things that we do, and we have habits in language. So you'll find that there'll be certain words that we, you, I, people that we encounter, repeat consistently, no matter what. If you listen or look at a transcript of someone's words, I just think of Trump again. I mean, he'll use, you know, superlatives, for example, in relation to himself. It's a pattern. So we have words that we use, and that most people aren't aware of the habits. There's so many habits that we have that are unconscious. I mean, I've been told, well, I'm conscious of it now. I've been told many times. I start many phases in trainings with so. I didn't realise the extent to which I did until years ago. Somebody pointed that out to me, and I was not aware of that. And there are some generalised habits. So if I were to say what language patterns that perhaps, or what language patterns that are addictions, if you like, you want to think about them like that are most likely to encounter. And what are the words that accompany those? And one of those words is but. That I hear that often. I hear that in some people's language quite consistently. They might use it in almost every sentence. And one of the techniques in coaching, for example, is what we call parts integration, where we bring together situations where people feel like on the one hand they feel this, but on the other hand they have that. Like on the one hand they want to do this, but on the other hand they're scared to do it, or they lack confidence, for example. And they have it coded as an either or. When in fact, the key very often to the going forward is to make it an and that whole technique, it's about creating an and, to put it very simply. And is a very powerful word. All clean questions, or most clean questions, start with and. When I worked for a management development unit, training unit in the corporate world a long time ago, I did a lot of behavioural training along with a guy called, some of you may have heard of him, Peter Honey, who did a lot of work on the learning cycle. And we studied people's behaviour. I would sit, and as people had meetings, would record everything that everybody said, not the content, but the nature of that contribution, whether it was putting an idea forward, whether it was a difficulty statement, whether it was asking for ideas, whether it was clarifying, so on. I think we had 12 categories. So we'd sit and mark every single thing, categorize every single thing that everybody said. I mean, it was incredible training. It was incredible training in listening, in learning to take what I would call a meta position. Incredible hours of my time was spent recording meetings in this way. And we would then look statistically at what were the consequences of using certain types of behavior and which ones were influential, because we were doing this particular training a large part of the time for salespeople. And the behavior that was most likely to be followed by a support, a yes on the part of other people, was what we called a build. And a build was to respond to an idea that somebody had put forward and to say, and this, so that they were accepting the idea and developing it further, rather than well, what but this, rather than putting their idea as an opposing idea, as a different idea. So a build on someone else's idea got the highest percentage of yeses as a consequence of using that, and yet it was the least used behaviour. There were very few people who would characteristically use that behaviour. It was much more likely that people would get into cycles of difficulty stating or problem stating, or giving information. That was a classic, just give information. And that just went on endlessly. You could use it hours in meetings, just giving information. And very often the outcome of the coaching sessions that I do can be someone realizing that a simple shift in a behavior, in a pattern that they have with the words that they use, there might be a particular word, can make an enormous difference. So, for example, recently I was coaching somebody who did have a habit of saying but, and it was to their own ideas. So they would have an idea, a thought about how they might proceed, go forward, and then but, and undermine the idea without really giving it kind of airtime or a chance. They were kind of, if you so to speak, use an expression, cutting their own legs from under them, let alone what they might have been doing to other people. I remember there's an expression that says, everything before the but. So if somebody says, oh yeah, I really like your idea, and it's so and so and so, and you kind of know there's a but coming. Everything before the but is bullshit. I remember being in my NLP training, and we had one guy whose habit was to use buts quite consistently, and he really, it's not a very rapport building behavior, let's put it like that. He got up a few people's noses, and he was asking a question of the trainer, and we were a group of about, I don't know, 80, 100 people, and he went, da 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 da, yes, see what you're saying, and of course, yes, I understand, so and so, so and so, and yes, I realise it's got this kind of evidence to support it. He kind of knew what was coming, and when he got to that point, the whole room went in harmony with him, but he couldn't have had a greater reinforcement of a pattern than the recognition that everybody knew that was going to be the word that he used next. And to shift from a but to an and is not just a shift in language, it's not just a semantic shift, it's a shift in experience, to genuinely look for the and this, and add to, sincerely add to what's happening for yourself. It leads to growth rather than a cutting down. And it's quite a hypnotic word as well. It's used a lot in hypnotic language and hypnotic structures. So my question to you is, what words or what word are you addicted to? And how can you find out? Presupposes that you are, of course. You probably will be some very characteristic pattern that you have in language, and there'll be a particular word within that pattern. So maybe you could ask for feedback from someone who knows you well, somebody you know will tell you, who's got those kind of observation skills. What's a pattern? Is there a particular word that characterizes that pattern? And what might be an alternative, on the basis that flexibility is often the key to influence. So even if the word that you're using, it will have a relevance sometimes. And if it's a habit, it's going to be irrelevant at times. The fact that it's a habit, it's powerful, in my opinion, to get to know what that word is. And this is one of the most, as those of you who are coaches, this is one of the most useful things that you can do, is to raise awareness. And this is a very specific, objective way of raising. And bearing in mind, NLP is the study of subjective experience. I do seem to need to remind a few people. I had somebody asking me recently just for all the techniques that I might cover on a program. Well, the idea is you discover your own techniques. Of course, there are useful ones to learn. And the power is in finding your own and studying, learning to study experience, not learning at techniques step by step. And discover what effect using a different word has for you. And so coaches, you don't have to suggest things. You can just raise awareness. Once someone is aware of a habit that they have a choice. And the discovery of that choice is empowering in itself. Et voila, as